said before, my name is Larry Otsuka. I help lead sales efforts on our peer initiatives team here at Outbrain. For those of you who aren't familiar with Outbrain, and it seems like from the poll most of you are, we'll run through what Outbrain is on a very macro level for about 5 minutes, and then most of the webinar will be focused in on how we can help you from an earned media standpoint. And not just earned, but paid in crisis as well, which is a very, very prevalent way many agencies, brands, and in some cases publishers are using us. So without further ado, I'm sure everyone on this call has seen CNN before, but once a reader consumes the content, they land here. So internal recommendations, more from CNN. In the right rail, you'll see more from CNN video. And then on the left-hand side, promoted discovery, which are third-party paid recommendations. So this is Outbrain. We power this module across most of the larger publications around the web. So we consider ourselves a content discovery platform. We are set up the same as a lot of ad networks in the sense that we are a cost per click model. The big difference here is we only drive traffic to high quality content. And I'll get into the buckets of content a little bit, but again, we're really going to be focusing on earned media on this specific webinar. So very quickly, we will go through the recommendation module within a minute. So internal recommendations you'll see here in the blue, more from CNN and more from CNN video. So most publications we work with leverage our services not only to power their external recommendations, but more importantly, their internal recommendations. And I'd say the two big takeaways here are, number one, underneath more from CNN and the CNN video area, these links are dynamic. So if you guys were to view this on a browser and hit refresh, you all would have a next set of recommendations for you and different recommendations in that. Number two, these links are personalized. So the more you click on our recommendations across our publication network, the better we are recommending content to you. So take me for a reader. I read a lot of sports and political content. I might be reading an article on CNN that's completely different, but because of my previous click history, Outbrain will make recommendations based off of what I've read and clicked on previously. So I think in a nutshell, the easiest way to think of Outbrain is it's far less about showing up on similar content and really more about showing up in front of the right reader. And the two things hold true for the left-hand and I should say top area of the promoted stories. And these are all third-party paid recommendations that really I'd say three buckets of buyers leverage our services for. The first are publications. So the likes of Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Boston.com, NJ.com. They all generally give us their RSS feeds, and we amplify their content across our publication network. And publishers act a little bit differently than the brands and agencies on the phone, where they generally arbitrage the traffic. So they might pay us, let's say, 30 to 35 cents a click, but every time someone views one of their articles on a publication site, they're actually getting 37 cents. So they're netting out 2 cents every time. So many of these publications have larger spends that are really just meant for monetization, of their sites. The second bucket are brands direct, which I'm sure some of you on the phone can relate to and fall into that bucket. And we work with about 85% of the Fortune 500 companies out there in some capability, way, shape, or form. And we also work with a lot of smaller tech startups and mid-size brands as well. And again, they generally drive to their owned media, earned media, and paid media. And then the final bucket we work with are agencies. So we work with media agencies, creative agencies, and my specialty falls into the PR and strategic communication agencies. So to name drop, which will be very quick, Edelman, Weber, Fleischman, three of the larger agencies we work with across the board. But most of the larger PR agencies, mid-size and small, have worked with us in some shape, way, or form. And this is a really good segue into what we're going to be talking to today, driving to earned media and getting your press coverage seen. I'd say about 90% of the traffic we drive on my team is to third-party paid recommendations, and we'll get into that a little bit. So in terms of reaching your audiences throughout the entire day, we are aware at Outbrain that your audiences are in front of their computers 24/7, but that being said, tablet, mobile, that can fulfill a 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. or 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. slot. So by default, when working with Outbrain, we automatically target all three devices. So we know throughout the entire day, we're reaching your audience. So these are some of our larger publications. I like to call it the name dropping slide. So from a news standpoint, you guys just saw CNN, but Fox News, Time, ABC News, most of the larger news publications around the web, we power their recommendations. But it's really important to keep in mind that we don't just power news verticals, if you will. If you guys read any sports content, you've seen us on ESPN, SI, Bleacher Report. From a tech standpoint, you've probably seen us on Wired, Recode, Tom's Hardware, most recently Mashable. And the publisher list you're seeing right now is really a testament to our reach. So globally, we hit about 555 million uniques worldwide, which equates to about 40% of the entire online world population. More importantly, and this is an assumption, you guys can write in if I'm wrong here, but I have a feeling that most of the people on the specific call today, or I should say webinar, are concerned with US traffic. And our reach within the US is really, really significant. It equates to about 190 million uniques, which then actually equates to about 82% of the entire online US population. So when you're thinking of scale and getting your content seen, we're your guys. So how does Outbrain work? And I'd say there's really two different areas to consider when talking about the mechanics of Outbrain. The first is where the content appears. So when you give us our content, how do we determine where to place it? And there's about 60 algorithms on the network, but they really fall into three main buckets. So the first main bucket is contextual relevancy. If you all give us a piece of tech content, let's say focused in on social media, we're going to be recommending your content underneath articles that actually have a hone in on social media. Number two is really based off of big data. So we might know based off of the billions of recommendations we serve a day, people who read sports content are more inclined to click on entertainment content. So if you've seen an article on ESPN at the very bottom, seen some entertainment recommendations, that might be the algorithm working at the particular time. And then like I mentioned before, the overriding algorithm and main algorithm at Outbrain is the personalized aspect. So using previous click history to better make recommendations to each specific IP address. So that being said, like I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of sports and political content. I might read an article that's completely different. But because Outbrain knows what I've clicked on previously, they'll make some recommendations. So again, I think the way to, I'd say, position it if you're a brand, or positioning to an agency if you're pitching to a brand and trying to bake Outbrain into an offering, is Outbrain is far less about showing up on similar content, but more about showing up in front of the right reader. So into the good stuff. So again, we mentioned before this webinar is going to be focused in on amplifying your earned media. And I'd say there's really two main ways to go about doing this. We'll just dive into this example right away. So Ford came to us through an agency, I'd say about 2 years ago, and they had a really, really positive piece about their C-Max hybrid car online and on Forbes, a third-party publication. So fortunately for us, when we're driving to Forbes, there's a ticker at the very top, right where you see that author's photo, where it tells you how many views the actual piece received. Excuse me. So in this case, the article only got about 5,000 views. So Ford was not content with the amount of eyeballs on the actual content itself. So over the course of the month, we drove an additional 100,000 clicks to this piece of content. So this is really the first way that you can use our services. If you have a positive piece of media that sheds a positive light on either the brand itself or the situation at hand, we can amplify it immediately. I think one of the ways that a lot of agencies and brands are starting to realize you can leverage our services is the B version of this, amplifying a piece of media that maybe is a little bit older. So let's just say this particular article came out a few months ago, maybe a few weeks ago, and in some cases, let's just say a year. If that piece of content sheds a really positive light on the brand itself, you can give us that piece of content and we can extend the shelf life of the piece. So what we like to call it is bringing the piece of content back to life. A lot of agencies, I'd say, especially within PR, are giving us really quality earned media, which I guess another word for that would be, or I should say phrase for that would be positive press coverage, and we're promoting it across the entire network. And keep in mind, we are aware that in certain cases, the US is really what you're looking to hit on a consistent basis. Outbrain can also target down to states and DMAs. So if there's certain initiatives, let's just say someone on the line is a big communications director at a startup in San Francisco. You're only looking to hit specific audiences, let's say the New York City DMA and San Francisco DMA. That is a possibility and is pretty common on the network as well. So keep that in mind when you're looking to amplify media. The last thing we want is to drive clicks from various places that really have no relevance or importance to you. So again, to rehash this slide, number one, promoting the piece right away to get views on it immediately. And then number two, extending the shelf life of the piece. So if the piece, again, is maybe a few weeks, a few months old, we can take that piece of content and bring it back to life. So I mentioned before, crisis communications. Over the past year, this is probably one of the fastest growing ways to leverage our services here at Outbrain. So this is an interesting example to say the least. Little Big Planet was a really, really successful game developed by Sony about a decade ago. Fast forward to about 2012, late 2012, as you guys can see on the Inside Gaming Daily screenshot, they developed a spin-off into Little Big Planet karting. The particular game did not get very many positive reviews. In fact, most of the reviews around the web were very, very negative. So Sony panicked. They were concerned with the amount of negative reviews and wanted to find one positive review to amplify across the web. So, fortunately for Sony, Inside Gaming Daily gave it a very positive review. So in times of crisis, whether it's timely or more of a elongated situation, we can take a positive piece of media and amplify it across our platform. So Sony is a great example. We've worked with quite a few automotive companies during recalls, driving to owned and earned media. And then finally, we've also worked with several larger Fortune 500 companies during credit card breaches. So it's really about securing a positive piece of media. We generally suggest earned. Earned isn't self-promotional. It's unbiased. It's authentic. People trust it more. So if you can secure a piece, whether it be on a larger publication or smaller publication, we can amplify it. And one of the things we really stress on the PR team and within Outbrain as a whole is turnaround time. So depending on the situation, and if it is a crisis, let us know, whether it's DIY or the PR support team, and we can turn around specific pieces of content and specific campaigns within 1 to 3 hours. Again, working with PR agencies, we know time is of the essence, but more importantly, we know most situations are urgent. So again, that turnaround time, 1 to 3 hours between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time. So I hit on earned media for a good 5 to 10 minutes, and that's really what this specific webinar is going to be focused in on. But we're also aware that second actions are becoming more and more prevalent. And when I talk about second actions, I'm referring to, yeah, it's great Outbrain, you drove eyeballs, which is obviously important in an impression-based world within PR, but it's also really important to bring extra value. So one of the interesting ways a lot of agencies and brands are using us now is using third-party vendors to build cookie pools through retargeting. And retargeting is really interesting. You'll see a really cool example here where we were driving to a piece of third-party content on Business Insider for Vanguard. It was a really positive piece, really shed a positive light on Vanguard. And what Vanguard did was they gave us a third-party pixel, third-party redirect, I should say, from AdRoll, and we were able to help them build cookie pools. So I think in a nutshell, and the easiest way to look at this is Vanguard ran a campaign. They drove eyeballs to this piece of content through Outbrain. Instead of driving directly to the Business Insider article, they gave us a redirect that actually built cookie pools. At the end of the campaign, that third-party vendor, in this case it was AdRoll, had an entire cookie pool that they actually threw back to Vanguard, and Vanguard had a better time displaying, I should say, targeting display, banner, Twitter, and Facebook posts. So outside of just driving unique views to content, there's other ways, and retargeting is I'd say, by far and away one of the most interesting ways to use our services in driving additional views and then taking those views and adding a second step and getting more granular in your targeting through display, banner, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn ads. So on the subject of second actions, conversions are something that we believe firmly in here at Outbrain. Whether it's driving to owned media, in this case you'll see an owned media example, or earned media, Outbrain has a JavaScript pixel that can be placed on clients' homepages, thank you pages, whatever that second action may be. So again, this is a great Vanguard example. If we were driving to an earned media piece, let's say that Business Insider piece you saw before, and then Vanguard wanted to track all of the people who came to Outbrain, read the Vanguard piece, and then decided to go to the homepage of Vanguard, we can place that pixel on the actual homepage and can start telling you which specific headlines and URLs are converting the best, which is super important. And there's something we actually rolled out, I believe about a month ago, called the KPI Optimization tool. This tool is really, really interesting, and I encourage anyone who's actually used the conversion pixel to talk to their either account strategist or support team about. And the KPI optimization tool takes this whole methodology a step further. Rather than just knowing which headlines and URLs are converting the best, Outbrain will then start pushing more traffic to those publications that are converting the best. So for instance, CNN and Fox News are two of our largest publication partners. If Outbrain starts to realize systematically that CNN is garnering more conversions than Fox News, automatically Outbrain will start to push more traffic to those specific publications that work the best. So again, it's adding another layer onto the owned and earned content amplification we're doing here, and it's a nice way to leverage our platform if your clients or if you as a brand are looking to add a second layer. So to finish up, in working with brands direct and agencies, I've come to realize as an individual that brand safety is super, super important. And one of the things we really pride ourselves on at Outbrain is our stringent content guidelines. So no debating that Outbrain was the first player in the content discovery platform space. But one thing I think a lot of people aren't aware of is our stringent content guidelines. So at Outbrain, we actually reject about 50% of the content that comes across. In working with agencies, especially PR, I've come to also realize that PR agencies are firm believers in great content as well as brands. So we generally don't fall into too many issues, or I should say don't see too many issues in that case. But here are some interesting examples of content we've rejected in the past. So your standard financial scams, can you really make thousands of dollars on stocks? Health scams, eat this, never died again. And then I'm sure everyone on the call at one point or another have seen 9 people you won't believe exist, the Foot Lady. So these are all examples of content we won't be promoting across the entire network. And from a brand safety standpoint, if your brand has a very good reputation, which I'm sure many of you on the network, or I should say on the call right now, do have, no need to worry about seeing this content adjacent to yours or stacked on top of yours. We're only promoting high quality content, whether it be earned media, paid media, social, or owned. So that's it from my end. We will save the remaining time for any questions you guys have. So Nat, do you have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, so guys, feel free to send through your questions using the the control panel, your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll read these out. So first question we have is, does Outbrain have guidelines for bylined content? Can we promote contributed pieces, or do the pieces need to be penned by journalists?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And especially working in the agency and brand space, I think one of the things we're seeing is a lot of sponsored op-eds, or even just content that may live on Medium or other forms of publications out there. We can 100% promote those. The one thing to keep in mind, if it's sensational and maybe shedding a really negative light on a certain situation, a certain person, we'd reject it. But promoted op-eds, Medium pieces, any type of content that essentially is unbiased and provides some value to the reader, we can promote. And paid op-eds, especially from Forbes and actually BuzzFeed listicles, are more and more prevalent on the network.
Great. This one is actually just about the crisis and bad press that we covered. So you mentioned that in times where a client is getting bad press, you suggest promoting something positive. So if I had a positive article on Forbes, can I promote it even though I don't work for Forbes?
Absolutely. The lifeblood of the PR initiative team at Outbrain is earned media. And the lifeblood of PR in general is earned media. So we 100% suggest promoting any type of earned media if it sheds a positive light. That's majority of the revenue we generate from PR. More importantly than that, I think the easiest way to look at it from a consumer standpoint and not being familiar with Outbrain in the past is it's really the same as tweeting something out or sharing something through Facebook. There's no legality behind it. As long as it's not behind a paywall, we can promote it. And the interesting thing about that is the publishers we're driving to almost encourage it. They monetize the traffic for free. So really good question. By far away, the most prevalent way we work with agencies and communication teams as a whole.
Another great thing is that if that article links back to your site, you can, the conversion pixel and the conversion tracking that we do that Larry mentioned, you can install that on your site to see how much traffic comes back to your site by way of that press article.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the agencies and brands we work with direct, I think that's something that they continue to work with and notice the sheer size and number of actual second actions people take.
This one's an agency question, so for anyone who's working for an agency out there, this might be relevant to you. For agencies, can we choose which clients' pieces get featured?
Yeah, sure. So I guess a little clarity that they're asking, do they decide what pieces get amplified?
I think so. So yeah. I think it's, can we choose which ones we put into the campaign?
So this is a good question. It's actually something I didn't mention on the call. So Outbrain is a yield optimized network. Outside of paying per click, the other thing we take into consideration is click-through rate. So the more interesting your content is, the more we'll serve it up. So if you have 10 really awesome pieces of content, all earned, but you feel 3 are more powerful than the remaining 7, you can give us those 3 pieces of content, and we'll actually push out the pieces that have the highest click-through rate. So there's really 2 different ways agencies and brands use us. They might give us all of their own media because they feel all of it's great and sheds a positive light. But I'd say more oftentimes than not, they'll give us 1 to 2 pieces that are just so far and above beyond any type of any other type of content, I should say, they have out there, and we'll promote that.
Cool. So this next question is probably related to that, just on the content. So can you talk about headline creation? We promoted some earned content, but we get a recommendation to try alternative headlines.
Yeah. So great question. So this actually is an interesting segue into the previous question. So CTR is super important on the network. And if you're promoting a piece of earned media, in order to give yourself a fair shot and a balanced shot on the network, we always suggest trying some additional headlines. And those headlines could vary. I'm sure you guys have all read a piece that the content is really awesome, but the headline is a little plain vanilla or bland. We always suggest trying a few different variations. One thing we notice, and I don't have this information in front of me now, is people see numbers and they somehow click on it more often times than not. So trying out some headlines with a few more descriptive adjectives, perhaps a little bit more targeted to your specific niche audience. So what, again, Outbrain does is similar to what I mentioned with the URLs. They'll take the headlines with the highest click-through rate will get served up more and more, and then those that struggle get retired along the way.
And we've got actually on our blog, if you head over to our blog, we've got a great post that shares an ebook that we put together with HubSpot. So we did some analysis on headlines that work well on our network. So if you go over there, that's a free download, and you can hopefully use some of those insights to help you craft those headlines. It won't change what people see on the actual page. So if you're driving traffic to, say, that Forbes article, it just means that we use these different headlines as alternative recommendations when they come up on, say, a site like CNN.
That's a really good point, and it's an awesome ebook as well.
Another question, this was, can you quantify what types of results we can expect? You mentioned one article went from 5,000 views to 100K views. Is that a reasonable expectation? Is there an average or range?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's actually a great question to talk about budgets and how they work here. So Outbrain's on a campaign-by-campaign basis. And the views that we garner and help garner to your specific pieces of content is really solely up to the budget. So, for instance, a minimum on our PR team is $500 campaigns. That's the lowest you can go for a managed PR account. If that's your budget, and we suggest generally spending 40 cents a click when you're targeted to the US, the easiest way to figure out how many views you're going to drive is taking the budget. So for in this specific instance, 500, dividing it by your specific cost per click. So in this case, 40 cents. So 500 divided by 40 cents equates to 1,250 clicks, all of which will be unique views. So I think in terms of trying to get a sense of, hey, how do I figure out how many clicks I'm going to drive? Taking the budget, dividing it by cost per click is great. And it's something, actually, I have a one-sheeter just because I'm so used to that question. If you want to email me directly, larry@outbrain.com, I can give you that one-sheeter right away.
Great. The next question is,
Sure.
Sorry, guys, just trying to. What's the best way to balance branded or sponsored content and earned media content?
Yeah, great question. There's really two different. There's a variety of answers I can give there, but I'm going to give you a really biased one. Both are great. I think earned media and paid media are so much more powerful than owned media. That being said, I think to the untrained eye, a lot of individuals won't realize that paid media is in fact paid. But earned media, in my opinion, is the most authentic thing you can promote on the network, or just in general. It's unbiased, it's authentic, it's real, people trust it. So what I usually suggest doing is having 2 campaigns, one for earned media and one for earned media, and one for paid media. You can break those out, see how the results vary, and especially too, if you're actually tracking those second steps, you'll get a sense for if the paid media is converting better or the earned media is converting better. My gut specifically is earned media will convert better because people trust it, but paid is I think when you're thinking of content marketing and native advertising as a whole, everyone should have in their arsenal paid, owned, and earned amplification.
Great. Actually, we've got a quick question here. What's the link to the ebook? I'm going to send it to you all now through your control panel, but we'll also send a recording of this webinar and a link to the ebook afterwards. Next question, what's a typical click-through rate or CTR on Outbrain?
Yeah, so on the network as a whole, when we're talking about publications, brands, and agencies, generally seeing about a 0.15 to 0.2% average. That being said, and this actually probably is a question that we're going to see coming down the line, but B2C and B2B content, CTR should be weighted a little bit differently there. I think from a B2C standpoint, you want people to click on your content as much as possible, right? Sheer numbers, more people to view it. So I think in that sense, the 0.15 to 0.2% CTR is a great number. For B2B, generally a little bit lower, right? It's a very niche audience. You're not looking for everyone to click on it. So from a B2B standpoint, you'll probably see anywhere from 0.07 to 0.09%.
Cool. Now this is actually back onto tracking at your earned media and the performance of it. Does the KPI optimization feature take into account individual headline and thumbnail combinations, or is it content specific?
Yeah, it's actually based off of the headline and image combination. So when you actually, if you decide to move forward with the KPI optimization tool, within the dashboard, you'll actually see which headline and image combo are converting the best.
Great. And this is, again, just one more question about tracking. If we're driving views to a publisher or earned media article, how can we see the conversion from that publisher's article to our brand site?
Sure. So we drop a cookie when we actually have this when we have a third-party pixel. So it's really important, especially from a conversion standpoint, if you're driving to earned media, that there be a call to action within the actual content itself. You're generally not going to see the hottest click-through rate or the highest click-through rates if there's no call to action within the content. So I think the easiest way is to talk out the journey right now. If someone's on CNN, sees your content earned media recommendation, they click on it, then they drive to TechCrunch. Let's say you're a tech startup. They're then on TechCrunch and there's a call to action within the content. They click on the call to action immediately and you have the pixel on the homepage. Right when they actually land on the homepage, the pixel fires. So there's no way to track, I'd say, any type of action they take on the specific publication. But if they view the earned media through Outbrain and then decide to go to the homepage or sign up for anything, wherever you place that pixel, that's when we can start tracking it.
Great. And I think that's all the questions we have so far. But what we'll do is we'll make sure that we send a recording, as I mentioned before, link to the ebook again. If you have any further questions, we're always happy to take them at support@outbrain.com, or you can tweet or email Larry.